my pleasure to be here this morning, and welcome to all of you. It's been decades, as you can imagine, since I was sitting here on the step as a child, and my parents, Teresa and Campbell Kerr, were here with our family, my brother John, my sister Wendy, who just passed in November. But this is cherished memories. And I was telling Lynn that this church was a foundation, call it a strong foundation, for the craziness I was about to discover in the city of Newark. And, we've all heard things about addicts and criminals and stuff. And meanwhile, I'm in this church, complete nerd, and happy and proud to be part of a nice family and nice people. But when I went to Newark, the people were different. And as I said, I started work as a result of looking for a job in 1965 in the Newark Evening News. Some of you may remember that paper. And the Newark Evening News, there was a job as a state parole officer in the city of Newark. And so I said, well, I will go in there, and I got the job. Now, this was the era of 65 through 68. So as you may recall, 1967, June, was the riots. 26 people died, were killed in those riots in the city of Newark. And I was there, part of it. I was rethinking that I had meetings in Newark with the Crips and the Bloods, who were perpetrators. And just as nice, you can't imagine how nice the meeting was. I said, but why do you do these things? And they said, I don't know. I don't know why. Well, if you look at the demographics then and even now, is these boys, these men, had no father that they knew. Most of them were either deceased or in our state prison system. Mother sometimes was there and sometimes not. They lived with their grandmother or they lived on the street. So the Crips and the Bloods and the Latin Kings were the groups that it sounds strange. I'm looking at everyone here. How could this dude, and I asked the same question. What, in the first place, I didn't know anything, for starters. And then we all got into it. In 1980, I was heading up the certification board of the state, and we created the great CADC, Certified Addiction Drug Counselor. And then if you got your master's, you'd be an LCADC. Well, I hate to say it, but people with CADC or LCADC are no better or worse than anyone sitting here. They have the cerebral learning, but what do you need to really help someone? And it's interesting that the guys that I worked with felt my intensity, I guess my concern for them, but also my ignorance, and some of them took advantage of it. So I'm out in 7th Avenue. This is in that period where I wasn't getting a salary. I was going around trying to learn more about addiction. And I was over in 7th Avenue area, up by Columbus Homes, actually. And guy comes over to me and says, hey, man, I need some help. My mother's really sick. She's in the hospital. If I don't get up there, I might not see her before she dies. Could you give me some money? So that should always be the cue. Could you give me some money? That's the ticket, but I didn't know that then. So I said, well, how much do you need? Just a couple dollars, he says. So I took my wallet out. Not a good thing. And I opened it up. And of course, I don't have much money anyway. I have $34 in my wallet. So I took the $2 out to hand to him. He said, "No, man, give me all that." I said, "I'm not giving you all this money. You're lucky to get $2. I'm being kind to you." He says, next thing I knew, I had a shiv in my neck. He said, "You give me this money or you're a dead man." Well, I changed things. So I gave him my $34. He took it, and I think he said as he walked away, "Thank you." It's a strange world. In the face of the most vicious criminals, there's a heart and a spirit that longs to live and to believe in the right thing. But unfortunately, to survive, they had to learn a whole new language. So another situation happened. I was very proud. It took me 3 years because I was living with drug addicts by that time in Newark, and this was 1974. I would go to school for the new school for social research during those 3 years, 71 through 74, I think Tuesday and Thursday or Wednesday and Thursday nights. So one night I'm getting in our Nash Rambler, and I'm almost closed the door, and I feel in my ribs something, and I look, there's a gun in my ribs. So I had my thesis next to me that I had just finished, all typed up with no electronic saving or nothing. This is just a typewriter. The old 1926 Remington. And then I could make copies, but it was 300 pages. So I had my hands on he's not getting that thesis. And meanwhile, I got a gun in my ribs, and he says, "Give me your money." Well, that was a familiar ring because I got mugged 6 times. So I took the money out. I gave him the money, which I never have that much anyway. He walked away. He definitely didn't say thank you. But he walked away, and I was lucky, again. So there was 4 more of those incidents that I had. And while those things are happening, while you're in terror, but you look at someone's eyes, and I'm seeing not a killer. I'm seeing a person intense and pleading for not only money, but can you help me? Those questions, can you help me, are never asked. It's just give me your money. Well, obviously they needed help. And then I'm thinking, what do I know about it? Okay. So I'm living for a year learning from my professors, what I call them, the recovering people themselves. And they taught me, I remember talking to this guy, Larry J. He had killed 10 people. But he was taking care of another man who was a cripple, who we call Sambo M. Little guy, and as a cripple, but Larry was guarding him and taking care of him. No one would mess with him. Meanwhile, Larry killed 10 people. So Larry took a like to me, and immediately I was protected. And not only by Larry, but the mob bosses on 7th Avenue. So anyone who would mess with me would be hurt by the mafiosa, what I learned later on in some way. Well, it was my introduction to people who needed help, and even Larry, they all would welcome whatever I had to say because they trusted me. So in other words, they felt my heart, they felt my love, probably they felt my stupidity, which normally they would take advantage of and get my money, which they did. But what I'm saying is when you're working with people, if you have an intense, maybe if not stupid, but an intense desire and love for them, and you show that to them, just without trying, you just are concerned for them, they read that. And it can really carry a someone further, that somebody can move forward and be inspired that you actually cared for them. Because you have a degree doesn't mean you care. A degree means nothing except you care enough to get a degree so you can make more money. Maybe you care, maybe you don't. I'm sure you do if you're going this way in this field. But a lot of people now, the field is now what we call, there are counselors and there are clients. So they're calling people names now. You are now a client. People have been clients for so long, no one would question it but me, because I remember when people were people. When you call someone names, and then they have more names, you're not only a client, but you're socially maladjusted, emotionally disturbed, co-occurring disorders, and on and on. They give you names. That's what the recovering people see. They see they're labeling me. They're giving me names. And it hurts me. But maybe I can get some money from them. Because they're so stupid, they don't. So I'll play their game. But some of them play the game and take it seriously, and they wind up acting much less than they can. So with me, because I was so naive, they, I think, felt maybe sorry for me, and it brought out their good traits like gratitude and strengths of concern for people. Automatically, we got to help this guy because he's going to get hurt because he doesn't know what he's doing. But he also cares for us. He's concerned. And maybe that's a good thing. So I had this kind of rumbling of education on the streets. There was a situation in Verona that, in the meantime, I picked up a dog, or a dog found me. And there's this big red doggie from the hood. And he was a leader of the pack. So he comes in, he likes me because I go out in Lincoln Park, and he comes over to me a lot. And he had holes in his teeth and his ears from fights. So he follows me back to 45 Lincoln Park, and I start feeding this doggie. So the addicts that were living with me figured out what to call the dog. He's got to be some name. So they call him Weed. So now I got Weed. And so then we come to Glen Ridge. When I come to Glen Ridge with Weed, it's not a great name. People in Glen Ridge walk the dog like, oh, hi. Weed he's not into the leash business anyway. So he's not feeling it. But, anyway, one day we got a donation. Linda reminded me this morning. We got a donation from this church, and Ray Knutson had it on Linden Avenue, and I went to pick it up. And I had Weed in the car. So there I am in my Rambler on Linden Avenue, which is on a kind of a hill. And I got out of the car to go get the donation. When I come back, the car's gone. The dog drove the car down the street, flipped a gear, I guess. I didn't put it in the brake, and the dog just went right down Linden and hit a tree. So I looked down, and it's about 4 or 5 houses down the street. My car's against the tree. And I go down there, and then the dog's looking at me. He didn't get hurt. But he's like, what, me? No, why are you looking at me? So fortunately, I don't even remember if it was drivable, but it was a bad experience. But the reason I mention that, because there are learning experiences that I have had that have been profound for whatever reason. But when you think of a dog like that driving the car down the street, imagine, thank God he didn't hit anyone or anyone's car. But when I think back about it, it had its humor. But that was me, kind of naive, stuff happening, and me not really knowing. But I got the best education from the best people. And one of the things that I think, and I'll end with this, I don't want to, have I gone too far? I didn't, Well, one of the things about that I learned there's amusing things that happen along the way, and you have to stay in that framework. And the other thing that Linda was by my side, and she was behind me in all of this, from Verona, and then so I had this firm, what I call a firm foundation. This church, for sure, was part of my belief that I can do anything. My mother always told me that. Before I left, I got all dressed to go to school, and she stopped me before I went out the door at 27 Valhalla and looked at me. You can do anything. You can be anyone. Go on out there into the world. And she kind of gave me that. For those who know Teddy Kerr, she was German. Whatever she had to say, it was strong. And so she gave me that kind of confidence to go out in the world and do anything. And I told Lynn, I remember sitting in this church with that window open and seeing the wind blowing in the clouds. And I guess it was kind of a metaphor for what I was going to be doing, because you never know. And of course, I sailed boats in the Verona Park when they had the A-class boat races from Port Washington and so on. Most of you don't remember that, but we did. That was a big part of right after church. So I also was looking out for the wind to see if we had some wind for our sailboats. That's just an aside. That doesn't really relate to, except that I was eager to learn, about the world, and never too confident to be a listener and to be amazed at things that were happening around me. So one of the things, that's why this church really gave me the foundation to say, I can do this. I'm going to be okay. Even after the muggings, I went back, and the power of I don't know if I had so much faith, except that God came into my life every time, must have been 20 times, where I would be directing to do something and no, I didn't do that. This is what God wanted. I couldn't tell you. I mean, even going into Newark to get a job as a parole officer, first I didn't know what I was doing. So I went in there, but I learned from them. So all the things that happened seemed to be, to me, by chance. Starting Integrity was not my idea. Starting Integrity was the idea of my peeps, the guys I was trying to help. They said, could we have a home? Because if we go out, we're going to shoot dope, and we're going to back in jail. And plus, I was their former parole officer, so I was guarding them. So they knew I was a kind of a protector for the legal world, probation, parole, and judiciary. So it worked in strange ways for me, life. Where you don't expect something, it's not like I'm setting goals, all they tell you to do, and move forward with your goals. And I didn't have any goals. If I had goals, there were some over here, and God's goals were this way, which I never knew until an instant before it happened. And it wasn't a dramatic thing where I'm definitely going to help addicts. No, it wasn't that at all. It kind of worked on me. And what worked on me is their faces and their vulnerability. Not to feel sorry for them, but actually I was pretty proud of them, and I was amazed at their abilities. So now you hear addicts and criminal addicts, you think, oh, lowlife. Don't think that at all. They could be up here giving a sermon, and you would be amazed at their ability, their talent, and particularly the women. And we have something that we do now. It's called an assessment. What's an assessment? Well, an assessment's where you look at someone, you ask them a lot of questions, you find out what bad thing happened to them when they were 3 with their father, or when they were 7, or whatever things. Oh my God! You write it all down. Then when you finish, you give them a label. Like I said, socially maladjusted. Okay. Where are you at now? Let's talk, says they. So The assessment that I give is by them. What I strongly suggest, and this is something new in the field that I'm strongly promoting, could you ask about their talents, their ability, their creativity, their brilliance? Could you ask them about their positive things as the assessment? Oh no, says a shrink. You've got to find out all their hidden problems because you have to fix them. And I'm here to say, you don't fix someone's problems. You make it worse by assessing and labeling them. But you don't fix them. They have to help themselves. So my mission is to inspire someone to help themselves. And I'll say one last thing. How far am I into my 1 hour? Oh, she's nodding her head. That's it. I had a lady, 62-year-old woman from Florida, somehow on the Skype, got to me and started asking for help. So we're talking, and in the first 4 minutes of her talk to me, she was telling me all about herself, and of course all about the horrible things. Meanwhile, the good thing, she had a daughter who's 13 at the time. And there were a couple other things. She's very articulate. She has a master's. Okay, so she is talking to me and crying finally at the end about that her life is down the tube, that she's ready to die, that she's addicted and so on. I said, can you tell me about your good points, your strengths, your abilities, your talents? She looked at me and backed off and couldn't say a word. How bad is that? She had been pummeled for so many years by so many people telling her basically how bad you are. And this is the label I'm giving you, lock you in. And now let me help you. How sad is that? That sometimes is the spirit now of psychoanalysis. And I totally repudiate it. People in need of help do not to hear how bad they are. If they want to say it, fine. That's their privilege. But it's not our privilege to confront and hurt them by finding out how many bad traits they have. So in ending, I hope I'm inspiring you to look at people in a positive way. It's amazing. Even someone you see on the street. Of course, it's hard. You see a guy on the street and you're a woman and you smile. Oh, my God. That opens up a whole thing. Give me your money. So you got to be, careful. But when you meet people and you greet people, you look into their eyes and you see their talents, they feel that. That's how to help someone. And they're going to go to you for help because they trust you and they feel your concern. So it's the heart that has to come across. It's not so much the brain. Now, I don't mean to sound, I don't know what it is that I'm sounding, but I really mean it's your spirit of love and concern in a wise way, not some dumb thing that you invented. Oh, how lovely. No. The real feel. And I think that's because I was so naive. That's what I had, and that's why I made it with people totally unlike me. And why I like them first, for them to like me second. And once they like me, they trust me. And once they trust me, I can guide them out of that hole they're in. Lynn, thank you. And church members, thank you. I will be here with Linda. And Linda can give you a first-hand experience of some harrowing experiences. Even when I brought her into Newark on Washington Street at a huge meeting of 50 people that society would call bad people, but they were my peeps. And they were all around in a circle, and they had done so many bad things. But they stood up and talked about themselves, and they were positive. And I wanted Linda to see this. And she came in and saw it. and sat there with everyone. And I was happy. But I didn't realize the jeopardy in all that I'm putting her in. But the people around the circle were very welcoming to her. And it turned out to be a good thing, and no one got hurt. So that was a positive. So I will be here, Linda and I will be in the back. If you want to ask her feelings when all this was going on, and she'll let you know. And she would always advise me a little bit, not a lot, but that might have gone too far or whatever. Still, she does it. Now I'm waiting for her to do one of these. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.